communities of color, workers, migrants, grandfathers, abuelitas y abuelitos, mamas, daddies, elders, babies, young folks, indigenous ancestors, who have spent love, time, sweat, and tears praying, caring for these communities, for these barrios, we the people.
This tree, this garden, this flower for generations, centuries, and time beyond Gregorian missionary calendars.
Who have been displaced by the forces of money, power, real estate speculation, corporate theft, corporate government, philanthropimping, redevelopment, criminalization, and gentrification, and now only exists as a cultural memory, an artifact.
Forgotten and erased completely, as though we were never here.
Gentrification exists to document the thefts, reclaim and take back the spaces, the memories, the images, the pictures, lives, and dreams.
To tour and document the default colonizers, AKKdemia, 21st century missionaries, the erased and colonized cultures and cultural stealers, and to reinsert ourselves in this stolen clan mark and to reclaim what little of us might be left.
Gentrification tours are us.
Coming soon to a gentrified, displaced neighborhood near you. Thank you, everybody. We are the Co-Coast Project of Poor Magazine and Homefulness-Sogorea Te Land Trust offer this beautiful conversation today about what we call decolonizing homelessness, decolonizing homelessness. But before we get started with anything further, we want to start ourselves in a good way, so I'm going to turn it over to my sister host, co-host, Corrina Gould, Tribal Chair. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Corrina Gould. I'm the Tribal Chair for the Confederated Villages of Lashawn Nation, a confederation of tribal people that were enslaved from Mission Dolores in San Francisco and Mission San Jose in Fremont, California. Today we find ourselves in the village of Yalamu. Yalamu is the place of the Ramaytush people, that still exist, even though we don't hear about them so much anymore.
Oh.
And the reason for that is specifically about what we're going to talk about today, around the colonization that happened to the lands and how the disappearance of people happened. And we're all seeing that in live time today. And so I just want to offer a few words while we all get settled in. We all have ancestors that come from different parts of the world, and this just happens to be my territory across the bay. And so we always want to acknowledge the First Nation people, the Ramaytush people. And my people are from Huchun and many other places in the Bay Area, 5 Bay Area counties. And so we offer a prayer today for all of us and all of our relatives that are having a difficult time. So grandmothers and grandfathers, creator and ancestors, we thank you for this day and this beautiful gathering of people. We ask that we open up our hearts and our ears and our minds to one another, that we work together in collaboration to end homelessness and to remember the abundance of this land at one time had no place of homelessness or hunger. We ask grandmothers and grandfathers to protect all of us and our families from sickness and from diseases, and we pray for our relatives that are without a roof over their head all over the world. We pray for our relatives that are behind bars and behind walls of oppression, behind walls of addiction. We ask grandmothers and grandfathers to lift up their hearts today and help them to feel lighter. We pray for those that have passed on, that they come back, our good ancestors, but that those in that other world they are met by language and song and laughter and music. We ask for a special blessing for our elders right now as we go into the winter months. We pray for their health, wellness, and comfort. We pray for our culture bearers and our song carriers, our medicine people. We pray, grandmothers and grandfathers, for all of the things that ail us right now, and you go into our hearts and our bodies to take care of that. We say thank you so much for the rains that have come, and we pray that our relative, the cloud, continues to bring us rain and fresh water for the next 7 generations and beyond. We have a good relationship with our Mother Earth as she continues to provide us with food and medicine for the next 7 generations and beyond. That we have a good relationship with the air that brings winds, and that those winds bring clean air for us to breathe for the next 7 generations and beyond. And that we remember our responsibility and our reciprocity with our relative fire, and that we create a better relationship with them for the next 7 generations and beyond.
Oh. No nonprofit organizer can speak for the Pope. No college professor can speak for the Pope. I can speak for the Pope because I'm on the Pope. Count my head, I'm on the broke and the spot. You see me, cause I own less than you. You diss me, these slums, mine. Frustration, mine. This thirst, mine. Starvation, mine. These wants, mine. These tears, mine. Displacement, fears, mine. They're with me all the time. No president is mine, and neither is his government. They strip and present the class hate I resent. I don't count the institutions of power. I don't count to a racist coward. Picture me not once worshiping their flag, as long as they continue to deny it slag. No news reporter can speak for the Pope. No social worker can speak for the Pope. I can speak for the Pope because I'm on the Pope. Got my head, I'm on the broke on this block. You see me, D. Allen, Deep East Oakland, California.
Muteado silencio, presente y me alegro. Mis palabras son mis balas, mi lápiz es mi arma. Muteado silencio, my words are bullets, our pen is our gun. So sit back and relax, cause we're gonna drive by your minds. We didn't cross the border crossed us.
I am that black woman that I am, who's celebrating my deliverance, liberation, and freedom from the broken chains of lies and deceit. I am that black woman that I am, who no longer has to hide my face with that awful mask of shame and ignorance, but now I unveil it, reveal it, magnify it. I'm talking about the true beauty and strength that was always there. I am that black woman that I am. Hallelujah. For you see, I have finally found my way out of the darkness of darkness and confusion, and finally into the paradise of light and truth. I am that black woman that I am, who is reunited with my children of the universe, and I'm talking about the beginning of creation. And I nourish them once again from my bosom that flows the milk of life. For you see, I am that black woman that I am. Land back!
Land back!
Land back!
Land back!
Black land!
Black land!
Black land!
Black land!
Houses people housed!
Houses people house.
Instead of swept like we are trash. Evicted, swept, and kicked.
Evicted, swept, and kicked.
Because settler towns like this,
Don't give a shit.
you see all those houseless mamas and daughters sleeping in a tent? Right here on 22nd. You see us houseless mamas and daughters sleeping in a tent? That's because we don't got money for the rent. I'm a poverty scholar, that houseless mama, that houseless daughter. I hide from your eyes because my body is invisibilized. Revealed only when I'm incarcerated or criminalized. I'm a poverty scholar and I rock my jailhouse attire because me and my po mama did jail time for the poverty crime. of being unhoused in this occupied indigenous hollow. I'm a poverty scholar, Melon challenged daughter, strong Afro-Boricua mama who can barely make it but did. A mama soltera and a welfare queen. Ivaye Mama D. So we are your poverty scholars. We are your indigenous scholars. We are your disabled scholars. We are your consumers, your patients, your clients. We're all those people that you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me, because this system has told you that it's not important about we. That we have no solutions, that we can't create self-determination. But this is a revolution. So we invite you all into today's conversation to recognize, to understand that poor people, indigenous people, self-determination is a solution to homelessness. So we're going to talk a little bit about different parts of that today, and we're going to get into what it even looks like, and what even decolonizing homelessness even is. What does that mean in a colonial scarcity model where we've all been taught that there's not enough for everybody, right? And that there's only enough for a few. And other settler colonial laws like that. So we're blessed to have our beautiful sister guide, warrior Corrina with us today as she walks with us in this homefulness revolution and liberation. And so we're going to ask Corrina first to talk about Sogorea Te Land Trust.
Yeah.
And all the work that
Yes.
your relatives are doing and you're doing.
Yeah. So thank you, relatives. You know, Tiny and Poor Magazine came and they visited us when we were in an occupation that happened in 2011. And that's how our work began. When we started to pray together around a sacred fire that was lit in what is now called Vallejo, California, and a village site called Sogorea Te. That was one of the last strongholds of our ancestors before they were pulled into Mission Dolores, San Francisco, and Mission in Solano County. And so, as we took over that site, this place, we realized a couple of different things. For 109 days, we were in ceremony together, and we prayed together, and we ate together, and created space together where everyone had enough. There was enough food, and there was enough shelter, and there was enough for everyone. And to remember that, for 109 days, people from all different walks of life came together. Hundreds of different people that showed up and stayed there on the site to protect that special place. But that special place also protected us, and it changed our DNA in a way that we couldn't imagine in this world today with all of this stuff around us. The Sogorea Te actually reminded us how to be human beings. It reminded us how we as human beings are supposed to take care of one another. It reminded us how much we as human beings crave to be in community and to be in prayer and to be in struggle with one another. And in that place, Sogorea Te blessed us with this idea, many ideas. But one of those ideas that came out of there was a way to get land back. You know, even though I live in the East Bay, my tribal territory encompasses Alameda, Contra Costa, San Joaquin, parts of Napa, and Solano. Our tribal people own no land. We were preserving and protecting that site in Vallejo because it had 2 shell mounds or burial sites on it. And our burial sites are always where fresh water meets salt water. It's a ceremonial place where we have prayed for the salmon to come home through that Carquinez Strait and up into our delta and on their way to the rivers and on their way back. And for thousands of years that had happened, and colonization disrupted that whole thing. When colonizers come to settle people's land, they take away the sacred, and they take away the ability for women to have leadership roles, and they take away the ability for us to speak our languages and to eat our own foods, and they create ecocide and genocide and many other sides that happen, right? And so it's not just a cleansing of people, but it's a cleansing of a whole life way for thousands and thousands of years. So Sogorea Te taught us about that. How do we do this? How do we protect the land? How do we protect the people? How do we protect the sacred? And it was all of those things that happened during our time in takeover of Sogorea Te for 109 days, 4.5 months. Heat, hot, 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 cold, 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 rain, all of that stuff, but we took care of one another. And it was this idea that came afterwards, because Sogorea Te was saved by having the first cultural easement created between a city, a park district, and 2 federally recognized tribes. It was 2 federally recognized tribes that stepped in. It was not their territory, but that wasn't the fight at the time. The fight at the time was to save and preserve that site. And by using that tool and mechanism, they were able to do that. But as we went home in this idea that created this PTSD on folks that were at the site for 109 days. It showed us this different thing that happened. Because when we went home to these individual homes. It was in a collective home. We shut the doors and didn't have food and prayer with our neighbors next door. Sometimes we didn't even know who they were, right? And that's how we're supposed to live in this world. That we go into our apartments or our homes and we shut the door and we don't have anything to do with anyone else. This individualism. But human beings were never, ever supposed to be that, right? We are social beings. We are supposed to be with each other. We are supposed to figure out how to get along. How do we ensure that everyone has enough? These ideas that Tiny talked about scarcity were brought to this land. And this land never knew that. This land never knew about private land ownership. And we believe as indigenous people that the land owns us. And that we are only caretakers of the part that we were created on. And so this whole idea is fairly new, especially in California. California was one of the last places to be colonized. But one of the first places about created laws about complete extermination of California Native people. And we don't learn about those laws in history. When we learn about our people in 4th grade, they don't talk about the laws of extermination, where the state of California, as it was created these laws that allowed people to hunt down Native people $5 a head and 25 cents a year. Don't talk about the laws of people that are vagrant. We hear that word still, these vagrants, right? These people that don't belong, these people that are doing nothing with their lives, these people that are just on the fringes, that are in the way of society. Those are from the first laws of California, which made it illegal for a Native person to speak against a white person in a court of law. Those vagrancy laws allowed for slavery to happen in California. That a white man that was working in the gold mines or on ranches or whatever work they were doing could find Native people and could drag them off of the street in front of a court of law and say to the justice of the peace that this person was vagrant, and because the laws did not allow Native people to speak against the white person, they could have them for 25 years as long as they could pay the court $3 or $4. Those are laws that we don't talk about, but I think about those laws when we're looking at the work that Core Magazine and Homefulness is doing about the sweeps that are happening today. And so this work is intertwined. Sogorea Te Land Trust was built out of this dream of creating community again, about the lessons that we learned about being human, about the idea of abundance still being here. In the Bay Area, we are in this bubble of dreams that happen and these movements that are created, that are here. We have these movements that were created, the Black Panthers movement and the American Indian movement and the queer movement, and all of these different movements that were brought here. You have these ideas of technology that was created here, this abundance of things that happen, these miracles that are created on these lands that have been our traditional homelands forever. So those underlying prayers for thousands of years that my ancestors created are still vibrant in these lands of abundance. But we have to think about changing the way we think about it. That it's not abundance for a few people, but there's an abundance for all of us. So I think about this work that Homefulness is doing and how we do this work in collaboration. Sogorea Te Land Trust is the first urban indigenous women-led land trust to be created in the country. Why is that important? Because our people could not preserve and protect that site at Sogorea Te. And for decades before that, we have been trying to preserve and protect our sacred sites and do education around the Bay Area. But our people were virtually homeless in our own homelands. And that this use of tool of a land trust could possibly bring us back land so that we could reinter our ancestors. 9,000 of our ancestral remains are at UC Berkeley. Imagine 9,000 of your relatives being locked up in shelves and cardboard boxes because the archaeology department at UC Berkeley made it a niche to destroy our sacred places, to dehumanize us, and then to have Alfred Kroeber, who works at UC Berkeley, basically create a handbook of California Native people and say in one sentence that basically we didn't exist anymore. They erased us. It is their responsibility to now bring us back, right, as an institution. But this prayer has been to bring these ancestors home, and Sogorea Te Land Trust is the tool to do that. But it's also a tool that allows us to bring other people back into touch with the land. Not just indigenous people, but everybody that lives in the Bay Area. We have a need to actually have our hands in the land. And we saw that during COVID, right? During the big part of COVID, when people were buying seeds online and were trying to plant things. And sometimes you couldn't even find seeds, the seeds you wanted, right? Because people understood, maybe not consciously, but viscerally, that we needed to have our hands in the soil, that we needed that connection with our plant relatives, that we needed that connection with the land so that she could heal us. And so Sogorea Te Land Trust has done that and has been working with people all around the Bay Area to create spaces that allow people to come back to having that healing together, to working on the land, to creating those spaces where our young people who have been urbanized can actually feel and touch and have those connections again. To continue to do this work of providing land for those ancestors to come home one day, of figuring out how do we as human beings come back to human beings again. How do we remember our responsibilities, our reciprocities? Even if you came here not of your own fruition, not of your own wanting, right? Because many people come to our lands and they are coming looking for a better way of being, or because they have been oppressed, or because of slavery, because of many different reasons they can't go back home. But what is our responsibility to the lands that we work on? The waterways that bring us water, the plants that give us oxygen. What is our responsibility to being a part of that circle again? That Sogorea Te Land Trust is about trying to figure out, how do we do that? How do we find these little plots of land where we can grow medicinal plants and foods, that we can heal together, that we can dream about a better future for our next 7 generations? How do we begin to do that through indigenous women's leadership that was taken away through colonization? How do we remember as women that it is our responsibilities to bring that balance back? That our men have had their sacred responsibilities stripped away from them because of colonization as well. And maybe have bought into some of the ideas, and that we have to bring that back for the next 7 generations. That we don't throw away anybody, but that we remember What is our possibilities? And that's the exciting thing about Sogorea Te and Homefulness, is the dreaming of possibilities of what could it be again on this land with abundance and with homefulness and with good food and medicines. And so Sogorea Te Land Trust is just that. It's about working in alignment with bringing back land, but not just land for us, but with land for everyone that lives here. And how do we figure out how to do that together in a good way? And Sogorea Te Land Trust has a beautiful website and a beautiful IG, and I implore you guys to go and look at it. Our website actually has people that are working on it all the time, so it's not one of those dead websites, you know. I grew up in nonprofits, and there's like, someone's been up there since 1978, you know, and that never changed, right? But this is not. It engages you and has resources on it, and it talks, and it has this beautiful thing called How to Come Correct. And it's a guide that our young people worked tirelessly on to engage people about how do you do that? How do you live on somebody else's land? And how do you come correct? How do you do that work together? How do you learn about where you're at? It is your responsibility to know whose land you're on. What was that language that was spoken here? The language that I spoke to you in is called Chocheño, and it's on the other side of the bay. It's not from here. But my great-grandfather, Jose Guzman, was one of the last speakers of the language. In Oakland, 74 languages are spoken fluently, and Chocheño is not one of them. And it's our responsibility to bring that language back, because where language is created, it is created on a specific land with specific people and has specific context to that place. And if we let that language go, we erase ourselves. That land and those airs and those waterways, those trees that are still there, yearn for that language to be spoken. And so we work on bringing back language that people can speak again and can hear again and can understand. And so I'm not going to take up too much time, because we have a whole bunch of stuff that we wanted to bring together, but that's just a bit of some of the work that we have done and why we have done it. And thank you so much.
Oh. Land back!
Land back!
Land back!
Land back!
Black land!
Black land!
Black land!
Black land!
Houseless people housed instead of swept like we are trash. So, Motiado, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Sister Tiny. Again, we are few of the folks of the community of the village of Port Magazine, which is an indigenous people-led, matriarchal-led organization, grassroots media arts, and beautiful that we use poetry, poesia, spoken word, just like our ancestors who used storytelling to share some of this knowledge. And challenge you too that all knowledge are taught in these linear ways that sometimes are taught in these facilities. So again, all of us from different walks of life, in Pachamama, in Maltor Nansin, coming out of poverty, struggling through poverty right now, and a lot of our folks working to be able to sustain their familias, their babies. So we're poverty scholars, Port Magazine, and we created this beautiful movement. All of us coming out of struggle, out of poverty. It's called Homefulness, which is a little piece of land in East Oakland, Huchin, that they to our auntie Corrina, that 10 years ago, 11 years ago, came with us and sat with us and offered prayer to the land in a real way, right? As we embark in what we now call Homefulness, which Auntie Frances or Dee gonna talk about.
Oh, Dale. So, what is homefulness? In my words, in my opinion, in my experience, it is the poor people's solution to homelessness is homefulness. It's very simple. I don't know if any of you have dealt with being displaced, evicted, the raise of rent. But yeah, I am a poverty scholar, and most of us at POR have experienced that. And it's also an attempt, it's a great template that every city should have a homefulness. Because it's our problem, our solution. So, you know, that when I think about homefulness, I think about liberation. I think about erasing that whole lie of rent. I think about the possibility of actually unselling Mother Earth. See, attempting to erase the hypocrisy, the lies of capitalism. And one thing I have to say is that it wasn't very easy building this land, unselling this parcel of land. And I have to give kudos to what we call our solidarity family, where we as poor poverty scholars have respectfully, arrogantly knocked on the doors of the rich and famous. Then we might have knocked on 100 doors and maybe 25 people understood the medicine that we were offering them. Radical redistribution. Offering them a chance to give back the stolen wealth and the hoarded resources. So once again, it is possible. It is possible to have a homefulness in every city, all over the world.
Anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum, because my knowledge don't come from the institution. As my sister, Auntie Frances, pointed out, as poor and houseless people, we have our own solutions, but we're not seen as experts. Most of the time, policies and politics and settler laws are made about us without us. But what we say is us poor peoples built these homes with a poem. It's always an honor to come to Howard Zinn Festival, of course, you know, the legacy of Howard Zinn, but the fact that this is a festival of books, right? Of palabra, words, of poetry. We write poetry. We're cultural workers. We're prayer warriors. We're performers and creators, because as poverty scholars, we don't teach in a linear way. We teach through our own spirit, through our heart, through our prayer, and through our poetry. And so this is always a beautiful moment to come, because we're bringing those words together. But cultural work, be damned if you're po. As my poor mama tried for many years to be even considered an artist, broke her heart because she couldn't afford the tuition in art school, and this concept of legitimacy, because you have degrees or you become the right channels or you know the right people. But this is also a poor people-led solution. And so through many years of working alongside of all of our many communities, we actually created a poor people-led theory that we call poverty scholarship. And poverty scholarship is very important because it is in very many ways the sacred text that makes homefulness possible. Which right here is the Manifesto, and I just want to pull that out because this is just one page of a 36-page document that we created over several years, and we could arguably say over 530 years as pan-indigenous peoples and poor and houseless peoples from all parts of Mama Earth. To really hold each other in accountability. We don't fuck with the polites, the pigs. We don't engage with the concept of mandated reporting. We don't internalize or hegemonize this idea that the system has a better solution for us. And that's very hard to do. We walk in liberation all the time, and we are hurt and broken people. And so we're always, unfortunately, oftentimes breaking each other. And all we have together is to learn from our ancestors of all the different nations and walk with some of our elders like Corrina and Auntie Frances and others who hold us to each other's respect. But this beautiful theory which is Poor People Led Theory, Art, Words, and Tears Across Mama Earth, is a way of codifying this vision into a container. Because, you know, when people have containers, they maybe take you a little more seriously. But really what it is at the end of the day is this is our spirit. And we really do believe that these things are sacred documents. You're not going to find this online somewhere. Just like our Declaration of Interdependence or our Poverty Heroes, altar. Because these are the whispers of our ancestors that guide us every day. So we're going to read a little bit of the basic theory of what is poverty scholarship. I turn it over to my brother D.
The notion of poverty scholarship is born in the calles, prisons, street corners, community centers, welfare offices, shelters, kitchen tables, assembly lines, tenements, favelas, projects, and ghettos. All the places people don't look for educators, experts, leaders, researchers, lecturers, linguists, artists, creative thinkers, writers, and media producers.
Poverty scholars are the people usually silenced, incarcerated, criminalized, displaced, homeless, disabled, marginalized, sorted, separated, and extinguished.
As poverty scholars, we are told that our knowledge is not valid or legitimate, our speech is improper, our words and our choices criminal, our lives criminal, and our words inept. Our languages, our writing, our thinking, and our art is deemed invalid by a process I call linguistic domination, which is a complex battery of tests and studies developed and promoted by formal institutions of learning. Even the more progressive city college that we're in right now. But all love to that pushback and all love to the city college warriors who keep this going with free tuition. Whoa. But they're promoted by these formal institutions of learning that have gained power and authority and legitimacy through lies like Sister Corrina talked about, and archives and spaces and places that they now own, and in so doing they own or attempt to own people and ancestors' bones and languages, and with that ownership to erase us. And these legitimacy is acquired through their wealth and privilege, through their theft and their genocide. And at the end of the day, sadly, as well, through the white supremacy that permeates this stolen land. As we all know, we're watching that settler colonial terror going on right now. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine.
Thank you. And we're walking with our brothers and sisters in all of these spaces and places. And they unfurl that same settler terror that relatives like Corrina and Janella and others went through right here on Turtle Island not so long ago. But the one thing that's really important again to talk about in this work is what Francis touched on, which is the Bank of Community Reparations, which is also chapter 10 of this very important book, and 12. Which is that we teach young folks and all folks with different forms of race, class, and formal education privilege about the concept of radical redistribution. We encourage you all to come to the next session of People School. It's going to be in January. It's on Zoom or in person. It's only a 2-day seminar with a short follow-up. Yeah, one weekend is not going to decapitalize and degentrify your mind, but it's going to start the process, which is urgently needed in this time of violent scarcity. As we talk about Mama Earth and climate terrorism, we have to recognize that concepts behind climate terrorism were absolutely built within a settler colonial life. That they are absolutely enmeshed, that homeless people, houseless peoples are hit first and worst by climate terrorism. along with our indigenous and poor people all across Mama Earth. And that these relationships to liberation are absolutely necessary, not just for houseless peoples like us, but for Mama Earth and her plant relatives and the winged ones and the four-legged. And that we have to recognize our connectedness. And that this liberation text that we're talking about can't happen. That this liberation of unselling and buying and then unselling Mama Earth is not just a dream, relatives. It's an urgent scream. It's an urgent scream. That scarcity and hoarding and acquiring and I got mines is done. It's done. And that actually in this construct of unselling Mama Earth, it can't happen without the solidarity family and the solidarity economy that are alumni of People's School, who then put their occupied and stolen wealth together so that us poor people could build a poor people-led solution to homelessness. So the worlds are entwined, housed and houseless, poverty scholars and wealth hoarders, and that our thrival is connected. So I'm going to turn it over to Francis, who's going to be our moderator.
Come on, Auntie Francis.
Yes. Okay. So, I'm going to ask this question. What is decolonizing homelessness?
So I'm going to read a little bit of this, just to ground us, which you've heard from all of us. Its origins are not, as many 21st century researchers will tell you, because of lack of rent control, redlining, violence, trauma or profiling, ableism, racism, eviction, and gentrification. Those are most definitely what has made homelessness go to terrifying epidemic levels. But these are not the roots. And homelessness as we now experience it could not have taken hold had it not been for the original theft of Turtle Island, the implementation of the deep settler lie of private property to launch the realist snake speculative industry, and a multitude of extractive industries set up because of that original theft for profit, extraction, and colonization. And so we're going to bring a little bit of, and I don't know if any of my other relatives want to add anything to that one, and stuff. But as we talk about decolonizing homelessness, what we're also really talking about is making it clear how we got here, right? And how those two worlds are absolutely connected. How you can't talk about one, you can't talk about we're sweeping people like we're trash unless you understand that Mama Earth is now for sale. And that the idea of selling Mama Earth is actually considered normal. And as we heard from Corrina, and I don't know if Corrina, if you can talk a little bit more about this, how we get to a place that we know that was, here we are today, but how your relatives considered and looked at homelessness when your people were properly stewarding Mama Earth.
Yeah, thanks, Tiny. I think that, we've all given pieces and nuggets of that information about what does it look like for folks to come and start buying a home or to buy property or to see this land as ownership, right? Rather than thinking about the traditional belief systems of indigenous people from this land, that we are actually made of that land, right? So that we belong to that land. It's a whole different concept to begin to think about. How do you belong to a piece of land or some kind of land that you have that the world is created in a different kind of a way. That there are creation stories for each piece of land up and down just the Bay Area. That not everybody had the same creation stories, but they knew what their responsibility was, and that there were protocols to actually have to follow. And we just think about protocols. When you go to someone else's land, you acknowledge it, and that's something new. That's recent in our history. You know, when you were going to school, when you were a younger person, you didn't hear about land acknowledgement. You didn't acknowledge that it was somebody's land. But then what does that mean to acknowledge it without acknowledging that those harms are still happening? That genocide isn't something in the past, but it's a continuation, right? That when you only teach about a people in 4th grade and then disappear them from history afterwards, that's a continuous genocide, right? I call it a white paper genocide. That you keep on not putting them into history. So how do you deal with that, right? To not be able to own land, that all of our tribal members are renters, except for a few. That most of them we were the first ones gentrified out of our own lands, right? We were the very first ones pushed off. That we couldn't take care of ourselves any longer on this land because it made it impossible as we were being hunted down, as our relatives with 4 legs were being destroyed, as the waterways were being destroyed. That this was colonization happening. That the state of California was actually colonized 3 different times consecutively. And if we think about that, what does that look like for indigenous people and lands? That the Spanish came in for 99 years and changed the landscape by bringing in animals that didn't belong here, that destroyed medicine places and sacred sites. That the Rancho period that owned the native people that was on the land that they were given, that changed the landscape as well as bringing in huge cattle. That the state of California was created right after that, which I told you about some of those laws. But then we can dream, right, Tiny? That we can dream, right, Mugado and Dee and Francis, that we can dream with all of you about a different way that this world can be. That abundance that I talked about is here. That abundance that Tiny talks about with the redistribution is possible. That we can begin to think about no one should own more than a home that they could live in. That there should never be that opportunity for people to own huge pieces of land that is not benefiting the community as a whole. That should be community land together. That there should be no starvation in this place that we call America. That there is enough food for everyone, and yet people starve and there's no water. We should learn about the laws that are being created by these people that we put into power over us. That as an indigenous person, I also get to be a part of these things called consultations with many different organizations and learn that the tires that we drive on today, all over the world, every time we drive it along a waterway, some microscopic pieces of it go into those waterways and pollute it. And we would never know that because they pass laws that allow those things to happen that affect us and our children and our grandchildren and those yet to be born. That those are things that we don't think about. And as human people, we only have one place to live. And we're not going down a path that's actually helping us. It's actually destroying the place that we call home. And so Homefulness and Sogorea Te Land Trust is offering opportunities to think about a different world before it's too late. A way for us to come back again. And we're bringing you into that dream with us. That this isn't just a dream for ourselves, but it's a dream for humanity. And so.
Oh my God. I don't wear the jail suit because it's cute. I don't wear the jail suit because orange is the new black. Ernie Hollywood will sell you that crap. I wear the jail suit because me and my po mama were arrested. I did 3 months in Santa Rita for the act of being unhoused. There are 284 lies, as I call them, on the books of the Settler Colonial Lie books that we brought over here from Europe to steal this beautiful Mama Earth from First Peoples. In San Francisco alone, it's 186, and there's another one being currently proposed in Sacramento right now, and there's another one that was already put into place that makes it basically illegal to say to be houseless on the street at all, which of course it already is in many other iterations. But if a cop comes to you and offers you a shelter bed and you say no, then they can forcibly arrest you and put you in jail. And so we have effectively brought back forced treatment. We've also brought the forceful incarceration of houseless people because many different reasons, right? But basically at the core of it, it's because people don't want to see our unhoused bodies on these occupied streets. And so a lot of this work is also about shifting your consciousness. A lot of what we teach in Poverty Scholarship and People School is also about shifting our consciousness from one of scarcity to not only abundance, but recognition. What capitalism did to all of us. And what it continues, or I say continues to do. I want to shout out some relatives right now who've been killed by these lies. My beautiful sister Pearl Ubangin, a Poor Magazine family in the back, is wearing a t-shirt for Luis Demetrio Gonga to Pat Ibaye. Murder for being Mayan and indigenous and houseless in this gentrified city. To Stephen Taylor, murdered for having a mental health crisis at Slave Mart. To so many of our other relatives, Tyrell Wilson, killed for being black and houseless in Danville. Luis Tamaj is the last one I want to bring up because he wasn't killed by pigs and he wasn't killed by a sweep. He was killed by someone burning him alive who didn't want to see another houseless human. So we have to recognize that these constructs live inside of us and that in some ways we're tacitly enmeshed with them, whether we don't agree with them or not. That to live in a different way, to walk liberation every day is a very complicated thing, and it actually takes a lot of work. So I want to lift up and love up all of you in this room who are even opening your minds and hearts, and some of you are already in that path, because that is a different thing. You're running against a capitalist narrative of hoarding and acquiring, of I got mines and I'm okay, and the violence of independence, and that the actual work involved in interdependence, or what I call radical interdependence. So having said that, turn it to all of us to read a little bit of what we're doing right now. I wanted to also leave time for questions and answers if people have them, but there's a few things that are happening. So in addition to the powerful work of Sogorea Te Land Trust and Homefulness happening, our relatives at Wood Street Commons who were working alongside us, who were violently evicted from a sweep, again, think about the hygienic metaphors, the sweep of houseless bodies as though we are trash, are currently trying to build and create their own homefulness. We go all across MamaEarth trying to share this medicine, as Francis talked about, in what we call the Stolen Land Hoarded Resources untours across Turtle Island. But we have created, along with Sustainable Economies Law Center and Sogorea Te and myself and many of us at POOR and Corrina, this concept of the Land Liberation Act. So we wanted to read a little bit of that because it's a different concept, and it really talks about how can we institute a change in the settler lives that we're all taught. I don't have enough copies for everybody, but I'm going to pass out what I do, and then we can all fight for it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna give one to a table. Dee, we're gonna start?
Oakland Land Liberation Act, introduced by council members. The space is blank. Ordinance declaring a crisis in the stewardship of Oakland land and housing, recognizing an urgent need to support Oaklanders to adapt in the face of global crises. Declaring a need to reconcile and repair deep harms caused by past and current laws and practices. Creating a ballot measure to fund a community stewardship transfer tax, and adopting several laws and programs to support the people of Oakland in collectively stewarding local land, building essential housing, healing from harm, and organizing projects that create thriving, safe, and resilient communities, like what we of Home Magazine is doing with Homefulness.
Whereas the people of Oakland are facing a need to rapidly adapt to a world in crisis. With both local and global collapse of water, soil, food, and energy systems, and with the deepening inequality, a widening racial wealth gap, increasing homelessness, land grabs by wealthy corporations, and a high likelihood of economic recessions and depressions. The city of Oakland must do everything in its power to support Oaklanders in adapting how we live, work, and provide for each other together to support creation of a long-term, thriving, safe, and resilient communities.
Whereas people all over Oakland are self-organized and powerful projects to stabilize their communities. These groups are diverse and resourceful, and they offer an immense hope to our city. They are planting food gardens, engaging in neighborhood-based mutual aid, studying spaces for community gatherings and livelihoods, building low-cost housing, creating shared living arrangement, and so much more.
Whereas the city planning, building, zoning, and housing laws have been suppressing community projects aimed at adaptation and resilience. For example, zoning was weaponized to suppress indigenous cultural activity and enforce the recent police brutality with the community called Nafsi Yami in the Laurel District. In East Oakland, a project called Homefulness was delayed by the city for years before it could allow unhoused families to move in to newly built units. Countless other projects are operating in the shadows, doing essential work to provide Oakland community members while living in fear of policing under zoning, building, or other laws. So, people may or may not know, if you followed us at all, that it literally, from the day that we began praying and building, it literally took us 11 years. Not because we were slow, although we didn't have a lot of money and we're constantly raising the dough, but the city of Oakland, or what I call the shitty of Oakland, the politics and the zoning police and the permit gangsters literally stopped us and said that we couldn't build a homeless people solution to homelessness.
Before we gained permission to even do anything on the land once we bought it, we had to get permission to use the land from the Ohlone Nation, as represented by Corrina Gould.
And so, having said that, this is a template, and this today's talk is actually kind of the beginning of a conversation that we're trying to have to push the continued self-determination of homeless and poor and indigenous people solutions, but also to push against the settler colonial governments that continue to enforce and criminalize poor peoples for the act of being houseless. Wood Street Commons was a poor people-led solution to homelessness, relatives. Wood Street Commons had all of the elements that we build at Homefulness. We worked together with them. The city of Oakland, in an attempt to honor the condominions, as I call them, and the really snake industry evicted 470 people in a violent, brutal eviction, and I wish I could tell you that was all it was. But right now, in Columbus, named after the colonizer, it's amazing to me, the Columbus, Ohio, in Tonga, in Etna Solidarity Street, Etna Street, in Lenape, in the Bronx, in Seattle, occupied Duwamish and Squamish territory, in Bellingham, Lummi and Nooksack territory. They are violently sweeping humans in the middle of the cold. We have nowhere to go. So again, this is an emergency. It is not just a dream, but it is a scream. And so we're looking at these concepts of the Oakland land liberation just being the beginning. I've had the blessing right now, and all of us at POOR, to work with folks in other cities to lift up the possibility of a homefulness there. But again, it cannot happen without the solidarity work of housed people standing with us, redistributing with us, not just their blood-stained dollars into love-stained dollars, but their privilege and access into spaces and places that a lot of us houseless and poor people could never be. So having said that, we consider ourselves more close to a movement like the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Movimiento Sin Tierra movement, Landless Peoples Movement in Brazil, the Shack Dwellers Union in South Africa, and Move Africa, Long Live John Africa. And we say that to say that people should know that Move Africa was not just destroyed by that man of color trickster. It was destroyed because the hater neighbors called the city on them. Let's not glamorize our revolutionary movements, relatives. People do not want to see poor people and indigenous people self-determining their own solutions, because we've all been capitalized by these lies. Having said that, this is an actionable, practicable thing. I know that it powers in. A lot of times we have these beautiful conversations, and we love those conversations. But you came, if you just wanted a conversation, you came to the wrong workshop, really. Because I'm going to call out, if anybody has a trust fund, see me afterwards, and I wish I was kidding. And I'm going to invite you to come to the next session of the Degentrification, Decolonization Seminar at People School. And if you can't make that one, there'll be another one in 6 months. We are in an urgent move. We have practicable things that we're doing. And I can happily say to you now that the 16th resident of Houseless Family is moving in this coming Friday at Homefulness. Yeah. And that is everything right here. Everything. And you know, many of us in Homefulness would be called service resistant, which is another non-profiteer and anti-social work word, which just means I'm not able to live in your container. I urge you all to check out a story I'm coming out with called The Tiny Tombs. I mean tiny homes. The low-key jails and the carceral systems that are created as solutions for our houseless bodies are a joke. And that after the 470 people were evicted from Wood Street in that violent eviction, some of them got this crumb of the tiny tomb, and they have effectively been evicted from those now because they could not live in a system that said you can't have friends over, you can't cook in your unit, you can't talk to people outside, you can't store anything, you can't have a pet, and oh, by the way, you can't be human. Right? I wish I was joking. So we really have to lift these solutions up. And the last thing I'll say to you before we open it up to questions, if folks have it, is there is a demand that we put out. I don't know if it's here, so I'm going to go back. Actually, let's go back to Clark. There's a demand that we wrote together with our relatives at Wood Street, because we're trying to help them right now to build their own homefulness, to get land that they can remediate and rematriate, as Sister Corrina says. And basically what happened is the city of Oakland, when we were going to go read the demand and connect the dots between our relatives in Palestine and Sudan and Zimbabwe and Cuba and Philippines and Myanmar. There you go, thank you. They went on for 4.5 hours talking about the new budget for the police. And so suffice it to say, they know what they're doing to close out. But I urge you all to check this out. If you happen to live in the East Bay, to contact the legislators and the politicians and tell them that we are asking simply for what they sort of promised, which was land after they violently evicted, or the cessation of criminalization. And the last thing that I want to say is that they're about to do another violent sweep at Raimondi Park this coming Monday, tomorrow, because best believe, relatives, if we do what my mama used to call, when we get evicted, we don't leave, we just move into the sidewalk motel. This is my first poetry anthology. And by the way, you should check out Multialdo's work and Auntie Frances and Dee's work, because Poor Magazine is in fact co, and we do need your dough. If you can kick down, we appreciate you so much, though. But having said that, Raimondi Park is asking for support. We'll be out there. But it's an endless brutality, relatives. It's an endless brutality. The bulldozers come and we are done. The bulldozers come and we are done. So the last thing I'll say is that in Frisco, we are currently trying to propose a homefulness for the thousands of hoarded and vacant office buildings that are in downtown. One building, relatives. And we could house multiple houseless folks in our own solutions, where we know how to take care of each other, because we know what we all need as poor and houseless peoples. It is not a linear plan. It is not a philanthropy. It is not a grant dance. It is knowing what each other know. It is poverty scholarship. And this is a theory that works. So we're going to be going back to the City Council in Frisco, and we're going to humbly propose a solution that could actually happen, and we hope you stand with us. Thank you. If people have any questions, you're welcome to answer them. We usually confuse and bedazzle people. I'm not sure what to ask. This is the Homefulness Handbook, also available downstairs, along with How to Not Call the Police Ever. It's a series of workshops we do, as well as a handbook. But this is how to build a homeless, landless people solution to homelessness. And I just want to lift up that, again, there are some powerful liberation in this room, and that each one of you can all be active in that liberation.
Can I just say something real
Please,
quick? Is that Homefulness was built without any foundation money. That money that came to build it, from the bottom floor all the way up to the top, was given by people that believe in this idea, this dream. So it's not something that's impossible. That it is possible for us to build these things, even through the zoning that has to happen in the cities and all the other stuff, that poor people are able to build housing, and a house where you don't have to pay rent, and a place where you never have to think about eviction again, and a place where you can actually breathe and be a human and live in community where people are checking up on you. When Tiny talks about these sweeps, it's heartbreaking because you don't think about it so much, maybe. You might be going down the street on your way to work, and you see this encampment of folks, right? These people that are living there, and then all of a sudden they're told that they have to move. at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're trying to gather their stuff, and it may be the last picture of their mother who they lost is picked up by a bulldozer, and they don't have any connection anymore. That their children that were taken away from CPS, the only picture of them is swept away like trash. That we don't think of it as human beings. When we could get that connection like that, we understand what that means. That somebody may have had their last good jacket thrown away inside of there, and they are cold now. So when we begin to think about these sweeps of human beings, we have to remember that we're humans too. That everyone has the right to dignity, and that being housed is a human right. That it shouldn't be based on whether you have the ability to have 5 jobs, working at and all these gigs places, that you don't have the skills that is required. That we also have to think about these other ideas that people are coming up with. There are thousands of our relatives, and I call them relatives because they are our relatives, that are living with mental health instability. And Alameda County is proposing to build a prison to put them in.
That's right.
And so we need folks to stand up and say no, that is not a solution for our relatives that need that. That the state of California got away from all of the things that they had to do and should be required to do and should be accountable to take care of our relatives that need that extra help. Instead, they're thinking of making sure that Santa Rita Jail is created in a bigger space to house these folks that are that need extra help with mental health issues. So relatives, there's lots of different ways that you can get involved. Calling people, writing letters, giving money, whatever it is. But you're putting your bodies on the lines when they're sweeping away our relatives. There are all these different ways that you could be involved. And so I just wanted to say that as we begin to build these second and third homefulnesses in different places across the country, that we need everybody to participate.
When I'm gonna
Pearl has a question.
Go ahead,
I don't have a question. I just want to say, like, before Pokemon School starts, there's an event at Homefulness on December 17th.
Yes.
Called Mercado de Cambio. Tiny and folks do this every year, and it's a way to actually be part of this process that has been described beautifully in this workshop, where it's the connection, the human face-to-face connection that is important before we can actually do any work. And so it's a great time. There are going to be poets from Palestine there. There's going to be food, always food at Homefulness. You'll see Homefulness,
Oh my God.
which is beautiful, and be moved and touched by the residents and by the larger community. So please come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. When
If folks like you on the East Coast can have the power to stop Cop City from being built in my old home city of Atlanta, in the South River Forest, folks like you can stop Santa Rita from becoming bigger and scary.
that part. When I say Mama Earth, I want you to say it's not for sale. Mama Earth
It's not for sale.
Mama Earth
It's not for sale.
Mama Earth
It's not for sale.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, go ahead.
I just have a comment. I'm honored to be here with my coworker. My name is Lorraine Lewis, and I'm from Laguna Pueblo, out in New Mexico. I'm a registered tribal member out there. We have our own struggles also, and it's disheartening to hear what's happening here in the Bay Area. We have the same struggles with our unsheltered relatives in Albuquerque. And these are Pueblo people, Navajo people, Ute people, Apache people. So, just being here in the Bay Area, learning about the any stories you all want to share. So it's a real honor to be here. We also have our struggles against land grab corporations as well. There's a lot of fracking going on. There's a lot of proposals to against the sacred sites like Chaco Canyon, the Mesa Verde area, with the oil and gas. And Deb Holland, our congresswoman, she's Laguna Pueblo also, she's been a real big advocate and a big voice for us to save our lands and to protect our lands. So being up here today, again, hearing what's happening up here, you know, it's heartbreaking, but you know, it's important that we talk about this and we share this as a tribal nation. It's our responsibility to go out there and tell other tribes about that, and that's why we're here. We want to share your stories as well. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming up here and showing solidarity with
absolutely.
us.
I want to offer to you and to any other warriors in that work that we do Poor People's Radio, and we would love to have you on the radio if you want to talk about what's going there, because the idea about us connecting is extremely important. So let's talk afterwards for sure.
In addition to having Homefulness, we happen to have a radio station of our own on the land called KXU. That's KEXU, 96.1 FM, the Crossroads.
Any other comments or questions or thoughts? We're passing around a sign-up sheet. We urge you to, if you want to sign up to it, just to kind of get the words and continue the conversation. What Pearl said is real. On December 17th, we have our Mercado de Cambio Market of Change, or the Posto. But it's also a lot of prayer. We're also danzantes and cultural workers, and so we bring that. Some of our youth scholars. We also have a liberation school called Decolonizing Academy. Again, operating as a poor mama and poor uncle run school. And so our young people have a lot to share. Some of whom are granddaughters and grandsons of Auntie Corrina. And we have a lot of beautiful gifts as poor and indigenous people. But at the end of the day, too, we have a lot of grief. Along with these gifts, there's this grief, right? Collectively, we're all in grief because of our relatives in Palestine. But we also know that we have to pray together, and that prayer matters, that poesia matters, that cultural work and theater matters, that our music matters, that we also have to take care of Mama Earth. So we, at Homefulness, we have the ancestor forest, where we honor relatives like Luis Gongora Pet, where we honor the folks who struggled and have died because of these lies. I also want to lift up that we actually are making a movie called Crushing Wheelchairs, which is a feature-length movie about the violence of sweeping humans like we're trash. It's not a documentary, relatives. We're going full throttle Hollywood. So, but not, because we're still us. We're a bunch of ghetto scholars. We're always going to tell the truth. And so we are honoring the ancestors like Luis Gongora, like Stephen Taylor, like Luis Tomaj. And it should be coming out in 2024. So please look for it. It's going to be pretty powerful. And we also have prayer in there as well. We are going to close, and I'd actually like us to close with a prayer. This is a non-secular prayer. If you're able to stand up, that's great. I don't know if Corrina or Francis, if you want to close it out. And if you're not able to stand up, you don't have to. That's not. Sorry about that.
Grandmothers and grandfathers, Creator, we thank you for this opportunity to be together. We ask that we're able to hold all of this stuff together, that we go forth and that we create a better world, that we understand that each of us can make a difference, that we spread this word together, all of the things that we have learned, all of the things that we are going to do, that we continue to remember that we are who we've been asking for, that we are the ones that we've been praying for, that we cannot wait for the next generation to come, that we are the ones that are doing this work together. We ask that you continue to give us strength to hold up our bodies and give us clarity and a good heart to continue to do this good work together.
Oh, thank you everybody
Shit.
so much. So much love.